Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Yoga Break It Down. In this one, we're going to start to explore back arcing. So that does not mean that we're going into full back bends in any way. We are going to be working on a pose called bridge pose. On occasion, I hear someone referring to a full back bend as a full bridge, but I think that's more of an oddity. So what we're learning today, I consider your standard bridge pose with our variations, because the lower back is certainly one of those areas that are in charge and we really need to be more considerate with. Before we get into bridge pose though, we're going to be working on some other back arcing warm-ups. So depending on how you end up feeling about bridge pose, how your back ends up feeling about bridge pose, some of these warm-ups may be the extent of back arcing that you practice for the foreseeable future. We're going to start with cat-cow, and I think of cat-cow as sort of an awkward pose. We're going to be on the floor, we're going to be on hands and knees, though I will demonstrate an alternative with the forearms, sort of like we did in a previous episode with the dolphin pose to avoid impact on the wrists. Cat-cow is a little tricky on the forearms, but I'm going to show you all the options anyways. So from this hands and knees position, we want to make sure that the wrists are underneath the shoulders and the knees are underneath the hips. And then this is about moving the spine, which, as we learn from poses like our forward fold, the tilt of the pelvis is involved in the movement of the spine. So here, as we exhale, we're going to round in the spine and raise it up like a scared cat. As you can see, the tailbone tucks under to help that happen. Then with an inhale, we're going to bend in the elbows out to the side. We're going to drop the belly down, and this is called the cow pose because we think of the cows, you know, with the large sway bellies underneath. And we're just going to let that belly hang, elbows out to the side so that the chest is broadened, elbows are bent. And in this position, the pelvis is tilted the other way. So you have the sits bones raising up towards the ceiling. You're going to move back and forth in this way with the pace of your own breath. Now I suggested an inhale for the cow and an exhale for the cat. And the only reason that I do that is I find that more naturally the pose where you're folding into yourself goes very well with an exhale when you're getting the breath out. An expanded pose, an opening pose in the chest and the belly would be a good placement for an inhale because you're allowing the lungs to fill up. I occasionally hear it being taught in reverse, and some people prefer the breath order in reverse, and that's fine too. So here I'm demonstrating the same pose but using the forearms on the floor. So the only problem with this is it's already sort of awkward to move in the cat-cow as it is. With the forearms on the floor, you can feel a little more restricted because you can't have the elbows going out to the side for that chest broadening in the cow position. It's just a little less range of motion. But if this is saving your wrists and you really like the cat-cow, then go for this variation. But soon we're going to be getting into a standing variation of arcing and rounding, which I think can be an excellent alternative for cat-cow. Before we get into the arcing and rounding part though, this is a great opportunity for me to show you some things about alignment of the spine, the hips, the legs to help comfort in your back, help reduce back pain. So first of all, if you have chronic lower back pain, one of the first things I think you need to check is how you stand and walk. Many people stand and walk with their feet turned out. The knees and the hips tend to follow the direction that the toes are pointing. So if you turn your feet out to the side, then the legs rotate open and the hips rotate open. If the hips rotate open, that means they're moving away from each other in the front and they're coming to meet each other more in the back, which means the back of the hips come to pinch at the lower back. So that could be one area of your discomfort in your back. To remedy this, we need to keep checking our feet to make sure when we stand and walk, our feet are positioned parallel to each other, pointing forward, so that the legs are in line. You have heel, knee, hips all in line. Another thing that we want to watch for is a lot of people straighten their legs fully when they stand, or even hyperextend in the legs. This can cause an arcing in the back. So the butt's out more in the back, and then there's an arc in your spine, in your lower spine. And when we arc in the back, there can be pinching. If you don't practice elongating the spine on a regular basis, when you bend in the back, there is not much space between those vertebrae, and so there's likely impact and compression when you have that arc. And so I'm talking about from simple standing. You're standing, you're fully extending your legs, the sits bones tilt up, creates a bend in the lower back, causes pinching. So here I'd recommend, as I'm demonstrating, if you keep a soft bend in the knees, then the sits bones can lower, the tailbone can tuck to point downwards. So think of your tailbone in line more with the rest of the spine to straighten out the vertebrae in the lower back, and that's going to be a lot more comfortable. So these are the first things I would look into in developing a new practice about if you have chronic low back pain. Learning this yoga back stretching will also help with the pain in your back if you choose the poses that are feeling good and making the adjustments based on what I'm telling you to watch out for. And very importantly, if any of these poses do not feel okay for your back, you're going to pass on them, at least for a while. So what we're getting into now, I would consider an alternative for cat-cow. So if there was any reason that cat-cow wasn't working for you, this pose you can really customize to work for your back. So I'm standing with my back facing the wall, a little bit in front of the wall. I don't need a yoga mat for this. I don't need the traction. And I'm going to start to arc and round in this pose, as you can see. So the arms are lifting up. And then the next area that we'd focus on are the hips extending forward a little bit. That's starting to create an arc in the back. Then we lift in the chest. Adds a little bit more of an arc. If any of that was too much, take it back a notch, and be where you can. So maybe it's just lifting the arms up starts to create a slight arc in the back, and that's enough. You're going to reach your arms up, you're breathing, you're going to lower the arms down, take a break, and move back into it. If it feels okay, we're going to go into a deeper arc, and we're actually going to start focusing in the feet. So our feet are going to be sinking down into the floor, into your towel, whatever you're standing on. And then your hips are going to start to move forward. Your chest is going to lift, and that's going to possibly encourage your head to tilt up a little bit. And then as your arms are reaching overhead, they may start to reach back just a smidge. You're going to alternate any stretch up with a round. So how you're going to do that is once you do your stretch up with any degree of an arc that's feeling okay, that's coming naturally, then you're going to bend your knees. You're going to bend your knees significantly, as though you're trying to pick something up off the floor. You're going to lower your torso and let yourself hang down and round in the shoulders and the spine. When you come up, you're going to uncurl that spine up to standing and into that arc that you feel comfortable in. You're going to move back and forth, and each time you come up and down, you might notice that you go a little deeper each way, just a little bit. Now on your arc, if you find that your fingertips touch the wall when you come up, that's great. That can be a tool. Don't force it. Don't make that your goal. If the fingertips do touch the wall, hang out there for a few breaths, and as a response to the fingers sinking into the wall, and when I say fingers, it's probably like one finger or something, but your response is going to be that the hips move a little further away from the wall, the chest lifts up a little bit more. It can be a tool in deepening that arc, so long as you don't feel painful compression, then you're going to back off. So that touching the wall is not for everyone. Some of you are just going to work with the stretching up. Some of you are going to find, I really have a lot of lower back pain, and I'm really actually going to, instead of arcing and rounding, I'm going to spend some time with the straight posture exercises of bending the knees, aligning the lower spine, and just practicing being in my body in that way to straighten the spine. So you'll have all of these choices forever, and you can come to them when you're ready for them. The next thing that we're going to get into is this bridge pose. So we're going to start with the bridge flow. And for this, I do recommend the yoga mat because our feet having traction is really going to be helpful. And I think our shoulder blades need a little traction too. So when we come to laying down, we want our feet parallel to each other, hip distance apart. The only thing tricky with this is we can't see our feet. They're beyond our knees, beyond our legs. So we got to sense with our mind where the feet are and align them as best we can. Now, it looks like in the footage that I shot, I'm at a little diagonal, which might be throwing you off as you're looking at this. And also it looks like my feet may not be parallel, and I'm not certain. That could be that they aren't completely parallel, or it could be just since my whole body is tilted a little bit at an angle, that's how it looks. So do as I say, not as I do in these poses. I really do mean as best as we can, we want our feet parallel. Because again, if we're turning the toes out, that's going to lead to discomfort in the knees and the lower back. The distance that you want the heels from the pelvis is roughly 6 inches. Again, you can't see that. So what I do is reach my hands towards my heels, and I want at least that middle finger to just lightly touch the heel, and that seems to be a good distance for this. So first we're going to do a bridge flow. So this involves, on an inhale, I'm going to start to lift my hips and pelvis, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to bring my arms up behind me, if the shoulders are okay with this, okay? And in this example, you're going to see my knuckles go back behind me and brushing the floor. Depending on your range of motion in the shoulders, your hands or arms may not get that far, and that's okay. You don't have to straighten the arms here. It's perfectly fine for the elbows to be relaxed, arms bent. The main thing is that we're getting that flow in the spine. So perhaps an inhale as we lift the hips up, and an exhale as we roll the spine back down. And again, if you're moving the arms, bringing the arms back down to your side. I really like this. I find this is a gentle flow, gentle movement for the spine, as long as you're not going so far. So if you see me raising my hips to a certain height, that doesn't mean you have to get there. So maybe for you, you're just lifting your hips up ever so slightly, and you're rolling the spine back down, lowering the hips. If you're doing this in a flow, I'm going to throw out there maybe 10 repetitions is nice. See what works for you. Another option here is to have a supported bridge pose, and we're going to use a block. So in getting a block, I really recommend a foam one for poses like this, that it's going to be more comfortable on your lower back. This isn't for everyone. So I'm going to give you my suggestions, and if you find that there is just too much discomfort on your back when you do this, again, you'll opt out of the supported bridge pose, and maybe you like the bridge flow instead. Remember that the block has 3 heights: the highest height, the middle height, and the flat on its back height. And so I'm going to demonstrate that in the different heights here. I go for middle most of the time, middle of the road. It tends to work. And so often when we lift the hips as high as we can slide the block under, but if we need a little more height, we can get up on our tippy toes to get the hips up a little bit higher. We're going to get that block under, and where we want the block to rest is at the lowest part of our back, our sacrum. So it's sort of behind the hip area. It's not just right smack in the middle of the back where the spine's draped over it. It's a really supportive position. The question is more the degree of pressure that it has on your back. So again, you're going to be better off with a foam block. The shoulder blades are relaxing on the floor, and you choose the arm position that you like. Your arms might be resting on the floor to your side. They may be overhead. Bringing the arms overhead can intensify the back arc. It changes, various things about the position. So just see which arm position is really going to work for you in this pose. You want your feet to stay flat on the floor. Tendency is for the knees to move out away from each other. So if we focus on our feet and keep them flat on the floor, then the knees will point straight up, and that's going to protect the lower back by keeping the hips in line. You can stay in this pose as long as you're comfortable in it. As you can see, I'm also demonstrating the block at its lowest height and its highest height. For the highest height, you usually do need to come up onto your tippy toes to get it under, and you usually need to bring it over sort of sideways and then tilt it into formation. And it's a little tricky getting into it, but as long as there's a degree of comfort with the block against your lower back, this one can be really nice because of the degree of back arc, but also the chest opening that you experience when you're doing it. The next option with interlacing your hands behind your lower back. So this is more the traditional bridge pose position. So I'm laying on the mat. I have my feet and legs in the position. I'm going to lift my hips a little bit and reach under and interlace my hands. I tend to roll onto the side of one shoulder or upper arm so I can lift the other side, roll that back and down, and I'm doing this while the hands are interlaced. Roll that side back and down as though I were going to rotate the arm so much that I'm resting on the outside of the arm. And then I'm going to roll to that side, hands still interlaced behind my lower back. Elbows can be bent, that's fine. And then I'm going to roll the other side. But as you do this rotating out of the shoulders and the arms tend to straighten more underneath and may straighten fully. Work on extending the interlaced hands down into the floor as well. Again, this may be one that you opt out of. So think of the different bridge variations and see which one you gravitate most towards, or if you choose some of the standing poses that we did. We're going to do a couple poses here that will also involve back arcing sort of as a side effect. We're focusing more here on shoulder rotation and chest opening. So you can see in this one, I'm grabbing hold of a strap, any strap will do. I'm holding that with the arm that's going to go up higher. So before I reach that up, you might want to take the knuckles of your opposite hand and rest them on your lower back. And I'm using that term broadly. So when I say lower back, your knuckles may have barely touched, your hip, or maybe lower down near your pelvis. And the idea of, reaching the back is nowhere in sight. That's fine. Whenever your hand is where it can go, because the shoulder's in charge here. The reason for its ability or lack of ability in this manner is that the shoulder tends to be rounding forward. And so we're gonna work on it rolling back, back and down. So the hand with the strap, we're reaching up towards the ceiling, we're lengthening. Then we're going to bend in the elbow and let that strap drop down behind us. We're going to grab hold of it with the other hand. Don't hurry on trying to bring the hands towards each other. It's a possibility, but may not happen. If you were drawn to use the strap, the hands meeting may not be happening. So from here, let's actually focus on the upper arm first, because the elbow tends to point forward, and we want to bring that elbow back. You're going to feel a big stretch on your upper arm. You're going to bring that elbow back until it's over the shoulder. So it's not coming forward and it's not coming out. It's coming up and back. That brings the hand with the strap a little lower. Then, if it feels okay, you're going to roll the lower shoulder, roll it back and down, and you're going to see if those knuckles can make their way up the back a little bit, or from the hip towards the center area of the lower spine a little bit, and then grab hold of the strap. And then from there, you're going to breathe into this, just where you come to. But notice that this is producing an arc in the back. So way before this point, you have assessed if that back arc is okay for you at this point in time. If it's not, perhaps the adding of the strap, perhaps the adding of the reaching made it a little too deep. So an alternative is bringing the one arm up as I demonstrated, having it bent, and just touching that elbow with the other fingers. There's going to be less of a spinal arc. If you want to deepen this, again, we can roll the shoulders open, bring the arms back. In this pose where you're reaching one arm up and back that's producing the spinal arc, one way that you can decrease the arc in the spine is to bend in the knees like I showed you in that posture exercise. So a bend in the knees allows you to point the tailbone down more and straighten out the lower back. In some of these reaches, you will have a chest opener and an upper back arc though, so you're going to assess if this is going to be okay for you. Thank you for watching Yoga Break It Down. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and add this to your watch later YouTube list so that when you're thinking about this pose again, you can come back to it easily. Remember that every body can benefit from yoga and can find poses that work for them. Pizza pie makers need yoga, archaeologists need yoga, Macklemore needs yoga, and you baby, you especially, you need yoga. So I'll see you next time. Bye.